And that's why we work so organically and so naturally. And quite frankly, that's why it wouldn't have worked in the past, is because if you're living from a different paradigm than someone else, one of you is always going to be somewhat out of alignment.
Right. And you know what's fascinating as you're saying that too, babe? It's like people could never really understand why that might be such a paradigm for you and I, because they don't see the lives that have changed per our choices. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we talk all things intimate relationships. And today we have a very special episode for you about what does love actually mean to you? This is the foundational stuff that it takes to build a magnificent relationship. And ladies first, as always, Emilia is going to take you through her sort of framework.
Love you, baby. Thank you. So to start, I think when we were talking about this, one of the most impactful moments of my life that came up when we started to really dig into some of this content was what was a very powerful story. And for me, it was this. It was me sitting down. I had made like a little bed for myself outside. It was summer. We were at the lake house with my family and I was overlooking the water and the sun was setting. And at that time, I had kind of secluded myself for probably 6 hours doing homework. I was in college at the time and I had taken on additional credits on top of what I already needed, what was required, so that I could have an additional minor at the time, and going above and beyond per usual, because that's just my personality. Not just, but that is my personality. And I remember getting some flack for it. And it's kind of the testament of my life in a way, because I've very much had a lot of people in my life where I'm always experiencing you're doing too much, you work too much, you got to work a little less, got to enjoy life a little more. There's a lot of that's been in my life with certain people. And I get it. People want the best for me, and their understanding of how I choose to live my life can sometimes be different from their choices. But I started to reflect on this, and babe, you and I in our relationship, I know you've experienced that a lot too. And I know people out there that are listening, I know they've also experienced some degree of that. Maybe not in the capacity where you might want to be on the boat enjoying life and not necessarily heads deep in your books like I am, but it's this moment of where other people are telling you maybe what to do, how to live your life, and the choices that are underneath that can really be very challenging to deal with and to manage, especially when underneath all of this, you understand that maybe what love means and how you live your life is a little bit different from what other people might believe love means or what choices are best for them. And so as you and I started talking about this, we realized when you and I got together, it was the first time that I actually really felt in an intimate partnership, really truly seen and heard. And you were the first one that never even came close to ever telling me something of that nature. You're doing too much in this arena. Maybe you should work a little less. Maybe you should, and for all intents and purposes for our listeners, working for me is service. It's contribution. It's helping others, always at the core of that. That's always been who I am as a person. Everything that I've done has always been to try to help others ever since I was a little girl, And so meeting Alan was the first time that, I've had some incredible friends who have also been really celebratory of who I am in that nature, being a workhorse, serving the world, contributing at a level greater than myself. But certainly not a lot of intimate relationships. And Alan was the first one for me that actually celebrated what my definition of love meant to me and how that looked in the day in, day out. Loving myself looked like pursuing my dreams, my potential, my goals, and helping all of that help others and the people around me. And so I remember a distinct story that I think you're going to tell that brought me to tears. And I believe it's really powerful for our listeners to hear, because I want this episode to help them contemplate truly what love means to them. Because sometimes we can get so caught up in a world that is telling us to be too much, or shouldn't be doing this, or should be doing X, Y, Z. And it can feel very debilitating sometimes.
So there's so much to unpack here, but this is a bite-sized 10-minute episode, so I'm going to go quick. What does love mean to you? First, you have to understand, what does life mean to you? And so there's a concept that Stephen Covey talks about in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where there's all these different centers, these different paradigms that you live from. So a paradigm is like a core belief. So if you're going to grow into a mighty oak, this is the acorn. This is the core belief that you live from. And we talked about that a little bit on our last episode on alignment. So I have a core belief that life is about maximizing my own unique potential and helping others do the same. So growth and contribution was a core belief prior to you and I meeting. We both had a mission-centered paradigm. So for those of you who've never heard about the paradigms, so some people have a church-centered paradigm and they're very religious. Some people have a work-centered paradigm. These are what people refer to as workaholics. Some people have a friend-centered paradigm. Everything's about their friendships. Some people have a family-centered paradigm where everything's family. And the truth of the matter is that everyone thinks they're right, and that's the problem, because there's many different paradigms, and most people didn't choose their paradigm.
Yeah.
So the most common paradigm from my perspective, having coached people all over the world from all different backgrounds, industries, all different people, I realize the most common paradigm in the world today is a pleasure-centered paradigm. It's a deep belief that life is about having fun. Life is about enjoying your life. And while I understand why that might be the case, it's a very, I think, surface level way to live. We all know that eating a donut will be enjoyable, but it's not going to fulfill you as a human being,
Heck
right?
no.
Growth and contribution will fulfill you, even though it's really, really challenging. And so on this bite-sized episode, what I want everyone to understand is, if you want to figure out what your meaning of love is, you first have to dig into what is your meaning of life. Emilia and I, in the past, were with partners who had pleasure-centered paradigms. And keep in mind as well that in your upbringing, you actually grow up and adopt a certain paradigm. So I think you grew up in a family-centered paradigm, and I grew up in a pleasure-centered paradigm for sure. And we evolved to create a mission-centered paradigm and a principle-centered paradigm. And what that means is life is about our deepest core belief prior to meeting one another, and the way we lived before meeting one another was from a place of maximizing our own potential and our greatest level of contribution. Growth and contribution were so unreasonably 10 out of 10 important to you and I before meeting each other.
What's up, everyone? I'm Sarah Pringle, and I want to share my experience with my relationships coaching with Alan and Emilia. So first of all, it far exceeded expectations. I was definitely nervous going into it, but they carry such an I got you energy, and we went the direction that I needed to go and dug through the layers that I needed to connect back to the relationships I currently have in my life. The most empowering part was them helping me realize that I have the power to attract any relationship into my life that I want, and that I have the ability to create the most beautiful relationship with myself and understand others at such a deeper level. They're this beautiful balance of yin and yang and masculine, feminine, and I'm so beyond grateful for all the magic that they're creating and putting out there, and all the beautiful, fulfilled, conscious couples that they're helping all over the world.
It wasn't until later that you helped me understand that there's a third one that's really important to have in there, which is your quality of life. Kevin and I used to joke. Kevin's my co-host on Next Level University. He says, "Yeah, you'd be the best speaker living under a bridge if you could." And he was joking, but he always focused on quality of life more than I did, and so he's more focused on profitability. I'm more focused on mastery and impact. And so, if you're out there right now and you've ever been told what Emilia was told, which is you think too much, you are too much, you work too much. They're living from a different paradigm, and they don't necessarily know that. And so they're not trying to hurt you. They just have a deep belief that life is a certain way, and they don't realize that you're living from a mission-centered paradigm or whatever your paradigm is. So if you've ever been someone who's extremely community-centered, and you've been with a friend or a family member or an intimate partner who didn't value the community as much, you most likely had some misalignments. You had some challenges. And so when someone says you think too much, what if they think too little? When someone says you work too much, what if they work too little? The truth of the matter is that life is about choice, and Emilia and I made a conscious choice prior to meeting one another that the meaning of our life and the meaning of love is growth and contribution, and that is the purpose of our relationship. And even in this moment on a Saturday, we are here growing and contributing. And that's why we work so organically and so naturally. And quite frankly, that's why it wouldn't have worked in the past, is because if you're living from a different paradigm than someone else, one of you is always going to be somewhat out of alignment.
Right. And you know what's fascinating as you're saying that too, babe? It's like people could never really understand why that might be such a paradigm for you and I, because they don't see the lives that have changed per our choices. You know, some of our closest family members may not ever see or come across the people whose lives we've changed so much. And how could anyone possibly understand what fulfills you if they never see it? Because their paradigm is very different. And so it's fascinating and it's mind-bending. And I think the only thing that might continue to contribute challenges in relationships is if you don't understand what your personal meaning of love is and of life and who you aspire to become, it makes it very challenging to really move forward in a way that has clarity and has complete communication, right? That being one of the biggest things when it comes to relationships. Sorry. It's going to be really challenging moving forward.
So the timer just went off, bite-sized 10-minute episode. Emilia and I both have other commitments that we have to get to. But before we go, what I have written down here is imagine the harmony that you could have in your intimate relationship when you get on the same paradigm. So you've heard sayings like, we're not on the same page, or we're not on the same wavelength. I talked about that in our last episode.
Yeah.
What if you're not on the same paradigm? What if you have a different definition of what the purpose of life is, what the meaning of life is? And of course, everything's going to feel misaligned. So when you hear that Emilia and I have been together for almost 2.5 years now, and we've never fought once, we've never stormed out of the room, we've never raised our voice, we've never yelled at each other or been mean or anything like that. There have been tiny little challenging moments that, yes, we got vulnerable, and yes, we might have been triggered or hijacked, but we never broke rapport, and we never broke physical touch, and we never broke love. And in the past, if I had heard that, I just want to be vulnerable here, I would have thought that that's impossible. How is that possible? Well, the reason why it's possible, quite frankly, Emilia's emotional regulation is bar none unbelievable. And our personal development is high, and that's, I take credit for that, and I give Emilia credit for that too. But more importantly, rather than it just being like we've never fought, it's because of the paradigm. We're living from the same core. And so there's not as much to fight about. There's not as much to argue about. There's not as much to, for lack of better phrasing, it's almost like we're already living in harmony as a yin and a yang because we're on the same mission. And our mission is now amplified with one another, not taken away from. And if you don't feel that way in your intimate relationship, the only wrong answer is to not check in on it. And so my takeaway, my action for this episode is, what is your paradigm? And more importantly, does your partner know what their paradigm is? Do you know what your partner's paradigm is?
Right.
Contemplate this.
And this can be extrapolated into any sort of relationship. That's what I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And I have the visual in my head of like, if you two were writing different pages, you're not going to be writing the same story.
Yeah.
But if you two were already writing the same story, you'd be on the same page. You'd write that story together, and you'd be an incredible team. So I'm super grateful for you, honey, because I know that it's who you are that makes this so wonderful. And I know it's who I am that makes this so incredible. And it's who we are that helps to contribute to the world at a deeper level, then goes far beyond ourselves. And that's what I'm super grateful for. So like Alan had said, you know, the only thing you can do is look at that and contemplate and really see what paradigm your relationships are. And if it's not the one that you live from, you know,
have a conversation.
Yeah.
Have a conversation. I grew up in a pleasure-centered paradigm, but didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't even know about paradigms. And you grew up in a family-centered paradigm, and you didn't necessarily know that until later in life, right? We adopt a paradigm.
No, we had a choice outside of that.
Exactly. If you were born in Shanghai, you'd speak Chinese, not because you were inherently supposed to speak Chinese,
right,
but because you were born in Shanghai. So our environment, just whatever paradigm you've adopted or your partner has adopted, you can evolve from that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Evolve Ventures.
Hey.
Before we go, we have two announcements. One, March 10th is our next virtual event. It's on outgrowing old friends. And again, this comes down to paradigms. If you have a growth and contribution paradigm, you are outgrowing your old friends. That's just the way of it. Please join us March 10th, 7 p.m. The link will be in the show notes to register. Super simple. And we hope to see you there.
Yeah. And if you want to jump on the phone with Alan and I, we have free 30-minute relationship talks, coaching, and it's awesome. You can literally get a whole rundown of what your intimate partnership looks like, or if you're single, jump on, see what might be the bugs in the garden for you to grow and evolve your love and really see what love means to you. So feel free to reach out to us, and we're excited to see you at our next event.
We've done over 80 hours of those relationship talks. So many people have transformed from those. Trust me, it is super valuable to dig into this stuff, and we can't wait for our next episode.
Yeah.
Talk soon.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.